fucking bastard.
Now you listen to me. The sooner you tell me what I want to know, the sooner you can go over there and take care of that piece of shit.
What do you want, Christopher?
You're costing me money.
You're gonna lose more than money if you don't shut up and listen to me.
The year is nearly over, and I can say without a doubt that 2015 was not kind to gaming. We saw the triumphant return of Bubsy Bobcat and the death of Steam's quality control. We saw the rise of the Tomb Raider. I mean, the rise of microtransactions and the rise of the Tomb Raider and other AAA games. And we saw Konami commit suicide with a string of ass-backwards decisions that led to Hideo Kojima's departure from the company. That's not to say that there weren't good things to happen or that good games weren't released, because that's certainly not true, but there was a bunch of shit. So here are my top 15 worst games of 2015 that I actually sat down and played. I am primarily a PC gamer, so I apologize for a lack of Godzilla and Tony Hawk in advance. But you shouldn't thank me yet, because I've got worlds to show you. Number 15. We'll begin the list with the game I easily found to be the most tolerable. Icecream Surfer is a side-scrolling shooter where you fight Broccoli Hitler as he tries to rid the world of flavor. The gameplay is bland and tedious due to one-hit deaths, cheap deaths, and a lack of auto-fire. The reason it's on this list is because it's a really bad port. You have to reset the keyboard keys upon opening the game because they're such a mess. Except this may or may not work, as the game has frozen for me when I've tried to do so. It also says on the Steam store page that it features full controller support, but it only has partial controller support at best, if it even recognizes your controller to begin with. Icecream Surfer is a long way from what I'd call horrible, but don't worry, we'll get there. Number 14. Despair is a horror game where there's nothing to do. You're told to find out what happened, but when I tried, it was impossible because I ran too far, and the sequence that would transport me to the next area in the level didn't trigger. When it decided to work, I found a flashlight that made every surface look like it was smothered in Vaseline. Once I walked down a long corridor for no reason and got to a vent maze, I called it quits. Also, the character moves around like both of their legs are broken, and you can't skip the opening title sequence. Number 13. New Kind of Adventure is dog shit. Plain and simple. You roam around a field with no goal except to make strawberry syrup. How you make said strawberry syrup is a mystery that the game doesn't bother explaining. There's nothing to do but explore this oversaturated, shitty-looking world, but you can't even do that because some areas are not available in the alpha version. The game has challenges loading in full screen, and even at 60 frames per second, the camera looks like it's having a fucking stroke. The most enjoyment you'll get out of this game is laughing when you reach a field of blue dildos. Number 12. Deadly Profits is a total clusterfuck and a dungeon crawler in the most literal sense, because this is a game where you can't even jump correctly. The menu is a mess, and for some reason includes the controls at the bottom instead of putting them in a submenu. When you're dumped into the game, you'll realize that enemies vaguely look like they belong in the same universe because they're picked from similar looking Unity asset packs. The enemy AI just stands around waiting for you to cross the corner, and when they're fighting, they'll half-heartedly swing their sword at you. I don't even know why I'm telling you all of this, because there's a review for this on its Steam store page that accurately sums this game up. Number 11. Taken is the next step in the evolution of the Unity asset flip. It uses Unity assets, but loads them into Unreal Engine 4, which should at least result in pretty looking garbage, but Taken even makes Unreal Engine 4 look like shit. Literally. In addition to shoddy visuals that include motion blur out the ass, Taken's gameplay is boring and broken. You walk around a maze while being chased by a ghost girl who you can just run away from, or you can just stare at her while she clips through the walls. The first time I loaded up the game, the first level ran at a frame rate of 5, then the entire game crashed. The most enjoyment I got out of this game was realizing that the walking movement was so bugged that you could actually moonwalk. Number 10. Fuck this. Number 9. Tempertantrum is what happens when you have no idea how to make a video game. Here, you play as a little boy named Johnny, as he has a temper tantrum and destroys every object in the house. Bad controls, floaty movement, and Bubsy 3D-esque camera mechanics make Tempertantrum nearly unplayable, and even then, the game can be beaten in less than 10 minutes. Every asset here was pre-made and bought through the Unity store, which tells me that no real effort went into this piece of shit, and the Steam community agrees, because they told Tempertantrum 2 to fuck off when it appeared on Greenlight earlier this year. If you're keeping count, this is the 3rd digital homicide game on this list, and it won't be the last. Number 8. Let's just fucking kill this thing, man. What the fuck? What the fuck? Oh my god. Dinosaur Hunt Africa Contract is shit. Your mission is to kill a certain Unity asset dinosaur with your Unity asset gun in a Unity asset environment. The cinematic kills are broken, and so are the physics. The developers patched the game and somehow made it worse, with graphical glitches and a clusterfuck of a menu that is difficult to navigate. They even had the balls to post DLC where you can fight zombies. What's funniest is that before they patched the game, they actively discouraged people from buying the product they put out because they knew it was dino shit. Number 7. Gynaphobia is garbage. While some spent time getting offended by the subject matter of gynaphobia, where the protagonist has an abnormal fear of women, I was offended by how fucking terrible this was. Within Gynaphobia, you play various games on a computer which serve as the game's levels. You can run through the first level without firing off a single shot while the game's horrible AI awkwardly runs at you with their terrible run animation. The second level consists of you getting tires and fuel for a car while avoiding zombies and Silent Hill concept art monster. The AI in this level is so bad that you will often see them running in place like they're on a treadmill. I gave up by the third level and decided that this had wasted enough of my time, and now it's wasted enough of yours. Number 6. fuck Bloodbath Kavkaz. This is a game that 5 or 6 years ago you would have seen on Newgrounds.com, but due to Steam's complete lack of any quality control has made it onto the storefront. When you boot this game up, nothing happens. It takes an entire minute for the game to launch, and you'll wish it hadn't. It's a blatant Hotline Miami ripoff that sells itself on epic Russian memes XD. Moving around in the game is a challenge because you bump into everything. The game is poorly optimized, which causes frame rate drops, and aiming is a pain in the ass. The graphics themselves are terrible, with characters flat out looking deformed, and the dialogue was clearly a Google Translate job. I hate this game. I fucking hate this game. But I'm not going to do a review of it because I want to forget that this shit exists as soon as humanly possible. Number 5. Blood of Old is an abomination. You know something is going to be terrible when in the first 2 minutes, your camera is clipping through a wall. Once you escape this cell, the game tells you to find a sword, but the game has the audacity to hide it, which makes you limp all over the place looking for it. None of this ends up mattering because the combat is horrendous. You can't even swing your sword after a while, even though the sword sound plays and your enemies take damage. Blood of Old may legitimately be the worst looking game I have ever played. Big Rigs looks better than this shit. There's no shadows anywhere, and calling what you see on the models textures would be the biggest compliment I could pay the game. Number 4. Galactic Hitman is Digital Homicide's worst game yet. I have never seen such utter incompetence before. This is a game where doors lead to windows and solid fucking walls. The AI in this game is so horrendous that you can be standing right in front of them in a crouched position and they'll do nothing. In fact, if you crouch, you can flat out avoid most enemy fire. The goal of the game is to clear certain bases of these enemies, and they make it very easy because they just stand around in the same positions every time and are susceptible to the crouching exploit. Every location is almost the exact same, with little variations in how they're structured. Calling this a game is really an insult to video games because this is fucking bullshit, and Digital Homicide is a studio full of talentless hacks. Number 3. Alone in the Dark, Illumination, is a game where you're neither alone nor in the dark. In Illumination, you play as one of 4 people and go around collecting items to execute objectives while avoiding monsters that can be burned by the light. Now, there's several problems with this. Number 1, you actually are alone in the dark because there's no one playing this shit. Number 2, the single player campaign is ridiculously unbalanced, so going around and collecting items while avoiding monsters is damn near impossible on any difficulty but easy. Number 3, there's no monsters to avoid because on said difficulty, they don't even fucking spawn. Illumination is a pile of unfinished shit that has no menu music, no voice acting, no optimization, and no original ideas. Number 2.
Unable to know the sweet smell of your blood running down my head. Would you deface
You let him
me?
get away. You did this to all of us. You let him get away!
Afro Samurai 2 will have you wishing that Afro had killed Kuma in the anime, so this complete disaster of a game didn't happen. Barring the usual rank amateur trash on Steam, it's rare when I know that a game is going to be a big buttfuck 5 minutes in. Revenge of Kuma is a hack and slash with terrible and broken combat, platforming for no reason, horrendous camera angles, quick time event sequences that can go on for 5 minutes, shitty voice acting, and music that was far better than it had any right to be. I sat playing this game totally perplexed, thinking that I was playing an alpha of it with placeholder assets because that's what the game feels like. The pacing does the game no favors as it's constantly stopping the action to show you some trivial event that you already saw in the anime and already saw in this game 5 fucking times. Oh, and by the way, if you didn't have a controller, you couldn't play this on PC at all. Even then, the controls were ass. This is a game so bad that it had a 96% thumbs down on Steam before it got pulled from there and PlayStation Network. You see, the publisher of this game, Versus Evil, actually gives a damn about the quality of games they put out. After seeing that people were reacting very negatively to it, they made the decision to pull the game, going as far to call it a failure and canceling any further volumes. If you go to afrosamuraigame.com, you can get instructions on how to receive a refund for the game. I find this rather commendable given all the shit we've seen publishers do this year, and the reason I'm telling you all of this about Versus Evil is so we can compare their actions to the ones of the people who made the worst game of the year. Ravenscry is, or at least was, the worst game of 2015. Holy shit, where do I begin? Ravenscry was released in an unfinished state, and according to the developer, forced onto the Steam storefront because Valve wouldn't let them put this in early access. Besides glitches out the ass like this,
I'm thinking of any way we can get ourselves a new ship, Chris.
and this.
Might be a good time to visit home after all, eh?
At least until
You decide to murder another officer of the Navy.
There were lines of dialogue that simply weren't recorded, so they weren't spoken. The combat was fucking shit, and the game was optimized terribly. The deluxe version of this game was being sold for $59.99 as if it were actually a completed game. Keep in mind, this game came out in January, and Steam refunds didn't come along until June. So if you bought the game during the gap between that, you were fucked. Easily the shittiest thing about Ravenscry was the developer's complete refusal to admit that they'd released a piece of shit. Now, let's be completely fair here. The development of this game was plagued with a lot of issues that weren't their fault, like the horrible voice work they received, incompatibility with Steam's DRM, and terrible management. The situation was such a mess that a dev claims that they only got to test the released version of the game 1 hour before the game was actually released. With all this in mind, that doesn't excuse the sort of behavior exhibited in the Steam discussion boards and the continued vending of this game. Number 1, if your game is broken, don't keep selling it. And number 2, own up to the mistakes you made and stop making excuses as if your troubled development cycle somehow justified you selling this turd for 6 months. I've even seen the developer go as far as saying that there was a global conspiracy against Ravenscry to make it look bad. The only thing that looks bad is this game, as it's currently being sold on Steam as Vendetta, the Curse of Ravenscry. The old Ravenscry page with all the old reviews was taken down, and on the new page, there isn't a single mention of the old game, because fuck responsibility, right? There's hack devs that make their way onto Steam via Greenlight, and then there's this. A complete dismissal of any fault despite clearly being in the wrong.
Fuck.
Hi there, DXFan619 here. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Content like this is helped out by contributions on Patreon, and this video wouldn't have been possible without you guys sending a lot of this shit my way on Steam. I'd like to give a very big thank you to everyone who gifted me these games, and to my existing patrons on Patreon. You guys are awesome. You can find my Patreon link below, or if you click the screen right now. I hope you guys enjoyed my top 15 worst games of 2015, and I'll see you next year. Fuck Ravenscry.